Hello students, welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Today we are going to discuss the utility analysis, particularly on the cardinal utility approach. We just discussed that how cardinal ordinal utility, where we measure the utility as such. So now, as we mentioned that the cardinal utility approach was given by Alfred Marshall, where it refers to utility in terms of numbers, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Unit of measurement under this approach. That means what? How do we pronounce measuring the utility? Can we say 100 utility? No. We need to say that 100 utils of we got by consuming, for example, say apple. So that is the reason the utility where you measure is in terms of utils. This we need to remember. For example, a basket of apples offers 10 utils of utility to a consumer. Right? We are taking one consumer a basket of apples which offers them 10 utils of utility to a consumer. So the cardinalist school postulated that utility can be measured. So the idea is whenever we consume, they say that utility can be measured. So if the higher the utility, consumers tend to buy that particular product more, right? If you are able to measure the utility, if you have 10 kinds of variety of products in the market, which product should be used is an important question. So that time, if you can measure the utility of different products and you give the utility in terms of utils, which is giving higher utils, you can consume for that moment. So that is where cardinalist school thoughts about that this can be possible to measure. But as we discussed, some of the economists, what they suggested that utility can be measured in monetary units by the amount of money the consumer is willing to sacrifice for another unit of commodity, right? So what they are trying to say is utility can be measured in monetary units by in terms of cash, in terms of money, how many units we have spent, and with that money how much consumer is willing to sacrifice to buy, like how many units of money they want to sacrifice to use the another product. That is what the cardinality approach says. This approach is also how it will work. When we see that there are assumptions, as I told you in economics, assumptions are very, very important for any kind of analysis. The assumptions mean that if these conditions fulfills only, our basic theory works. Now the question comes here is, assumption is consumers are rationality. We discussed what do you mean by rationality? A rationality where consumers are try to maximize their utility of satisfaction. At best, whatever the resources they have, they try, still they get the maximum utility. That is called the rationality. And this has to be believed. If people who are approaching cardinal utility, that this can be measured in terms of number. And the another major assumption is constant marginal utility of money. What is that meaning? The additional you get money. Generally what happens, money as long as you earn, add into your fold, into your account, you will get more sense of satisfaction. But here in this cardinal utility approach theory, we say that when we wanted to analyze the cardinal utility approach, the marginal utility of the money should be constant. I hope you remember what is the terminology of marginal utility. Marginal utility is additional utility. So there are also assumption that dimensioning marginal utility. What is that? When you consume a commodity, it can be, the utility can be the total utility which you derive from first unit of commodity to fifth unit of commodity, the utility will not be the same. It can be declined. So the dimensioning marginal utility is inevitable in the analysis of our cardinal utility approach. So the total utility of basket of goods depends on the quantity of the individual commodities. Okay, so this also can be expressed in a little basic mathematical form. It is the amount of utility consumers gets by consuming all the units of commodity, which we already mentioned when I talk about the total utility, right? The marginal utility is different from the total utility. Marginal utility is only talks about additional utility. Total utility talks about the total by consuming various commodities, how much utility you derive. So if there are n units of the commodity, then the total utility is sum of the utilities of all n units of the commodity. So therefore, there can be 4 units which can be seen in the your PPT, that the 4 units like n u1, u2, u3 and u4. So the number of 4 units of commodities we use, we get the total utility, right? So n1, u1 to u4 are the utilities, n1 to n4 is number of commodities which we used. So thus if by consuming first apple, consumer gets 12 utils of satisfaction, 10 utils from the second apple, 9 utils from the third and 7 utils from the fourth apple, then the total utility will be 12 plus 10 plus 9 plus 7 equal to 38. So this is a simple total utility. So marginal utility, which we already discussed, that it is the change in the total utility due to the change in the consumption of commodity per unit of time. It can also be defined as the addition made to the total utility by consuming additional unit of commodity. For example, if you take simply, if the total utility of 3 cups of tea is 18 utils and consuming a 4th cup of rice to 20 utils, 1 more cup of tea, the marginal utility is only 2, that is 20 minus 18. As I told you, delta change. So 18 minus or 20 minus 18 is a 2 utils. Therefore, by consuming 1 more cup of tea, the additional utility consumer gets is 2 utils. So this also can be expressed in mathematically. Marginal utility MU equal to delta TU by delta Q. TU is the change in the total utility. The delta Q is change in the quantity. So the utils in the terms of used by Marshall is measuring the unit of utility. This also can be measured to marginal utility equal to total utility minus n minus 1. So where you can find. So this you can see that total utility and marginal utility schedule. Whatever we discussed here, it is given. You can see in the table that how marginal utility has been initially it was increasing, dimensioning marginal utility, total utility was increasing and maximized the total utility. When maximized total utility, the marginal utility become 0, where when it is decreasing the total utility, you could see that the negative of marginal utility. Both can be observed in the graph as well as in the table. So in this particular part, what we discussed about the total cardinal utility approach, how we measured the total utility and a marginal utility. So the next we will try to discuss on the cardinal utility approach. Thank you.